Okay, we are live. Hey there, everybody. John Gums here with Dakota Grappler. Coming in with a little cold, but we're going to talk a bunch of wrestling tonight with Tom Schoenhard from Rapid City. We're going to get some wrestling, talk a lot of South Dakota stuff. We are going to have a lot of fun just talking wrestling. I don't know, Dakota Grappler's been here since 1999. We're just trying to do more technology stuff, but here to promote the sport of wrestling, number one. Hoping you guys can hear me. Those that are on tonight and start watching, go down and subscribe. We've got a lot of viewers as it goes, and that's kind of our goal. The goal at Dakota Grappler this week or this year is to get 1,000 subscribers. Other than that, happy to be here, and I'm going to introduce you to a great wrestling guy, South Dakota, and I'm going to actually have him introduce himself. We'll go from there.
Okay. John, thanks for having me. My name is Tom Schoenhard. I live in Rapid City. I'm married out here. I've got a couple boys that are in wrestling, a 6th grader at Southwest Middle School and a 10th grader at Rapid City Stevens. And I've got a daughter that plays soccer at Northern. She's a junior up there. In my spare time, I help with our club out here. I've been a part of the club out here a little over 7 years. I coach a little football, little baseball, and I umpire some baseball. I'm also a part of the South Dakota Wrestling Coaches Association board as a youth representative. And a lot of you have probably seen me at the Rapid City Invite at the state tournaments. I get an opportunity to kind of work the floor and the operations piece of the state tournaments and the Rapid City Invite, which is great. I've made some great relationships with referees and coaches and kids, and I've been involved in the state AAU side for a number of years, running the state AAU tournaments. We actually have the state tournament out here this year in Rapid City with some great team members. And then I've done some organizing on some state or some national duels down in Des Moines for AAU. And then I'm also part of the Black Hills Wrestling Academy out here in Rapid City.
Okay, well, you sound busy. Awesome for the sport. Hey, quick question. Tell me a little bit where you grew up and some of your upbringings with wrestling.
Sure. I'm a Chamberlain kid. So in the central part of the state for Chamberlain, that's an A school. So the coach down there now, John Donovan, and Big Nash Hutmaker, his dad those were my teammates. So I wrestled in Chamberlain. I was an 8th grader in Chamberlain, weighing about 93 pounds, wrestling 98, just getting hammered. There's a guy that came up, and you might know Owen Hanson. His dad actually used to pin me a lot in 8th grade. And I told him a few weeks ago when he was out here for a preseason camp that he was the reason I quit wrestling because he just beat up on me too much. But so I wrestled through 8th grade. I wasn't that good. And as John would say, if I stuck it out, I probably would have won more matches. But I ended up graduating from Huron High School. Okay. I moved up there my last year of school up in the northern, more central part of the state. And then we moved out here to Rapid City, South Dakota in 2006 from Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay.
So that's where I grew up.
Well, I tell you what, the Chamberlain area is, right now it's the hotbed with Big Nash there and stuff.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, good coach. I've known John Donovan for a long time. In fact, when I got into coaching, my first part was in Mobridge, South Dakota, and he was out in Harding County. And boy, did he put a licking on me. Some of those Patton boys, and man, a couple of my guys thought they were pretty tough, and then it was a wake up call. And I'm going, they got like 50 people in that town, how come we can't beat them?
Right.
But man, he had some tough teams, and it's good to see. I remember seeing Nash for the first time when he was about freshman early in the year, and I said, "Oh boy, who's that baby-faced kid you got there that's just killing everybody?" And he goes, "Oh boy, I'm gonna have to get back in shape." And he was John's skinny. He's not a big guy.
Yeah,
he's tall, but. And then I was going, "Geez, you're gonna have a wake-up call in the next couple of years because you're not getting any younger."
Right.
Yeah. But no, I tell you what, the upbringings of wrestling, it's kind of a tight knit community. All of us kind of, have that once a wrestler, always a wrestler mentalities,
I've been blessed. My kids got into it. Our coach out here, Travis King, asked me when my son was 4, my middle son, Jack, if he was interested in wrestling. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he asked him to come up to the room, and I tell this story a lot. And I said, "No, he's just been doing gymnastics." And he said, "Perfect." And he came up to the room when he was 4 and rolled around. He said, "Don't worry about it. Don't wrestle any tournaments. Just come up and have fun." And now he's a sophomore, and he's been with Travis since he was 4. So it's been fantastic. And like I said, I've met some fantastic people. My daughter played basketball growing up into high school a little bit, and then primarily soccer. But the wrestling community is so different. The parents are different. I tell a story recently. Last November, I went into Safeway getting some Thanksgiving supplies over Thanksgiving, and I ran into another parent of a wrestler that just graduated. It was Cody Bevere's mom, who was like a 20-pounder back in the day here a couple of years ago. And she didn't say hello or happy Thanksgiving, right? First thing she said was, "What does your boy weigh?" That's the wrestling community. What's your boy weigh? What's he going to wrestle? And it was weird because there was people around us and they didn't really know what we were talking about. But in that community, that's kind of how you know people. And so it was pretty awesome.
It's like talking about the weather. What does your boy weigh?
Yeah. So it was kind of fun. She asked me about that, and again, I've met some great people and I've really enjoyed it. And it's a different, every kid gets a chance to step in the ring, and that's one of the beauties of wrestling. Whether you just get 2 matches or 5 for the day, depending on where you're at, or a duel. Nobody really is worried about the starting 5 that are out there, or who's in or who's out, because most of the kids get an opportunity to compete, and it's a different mindset for a family, and it's fantastic.
Well, I tell you what, you learn so much about your kids, you learn about your family, you learn about so much with the sport. I remember seeing you for the first time walking around in tournaments, and you had a fanny pack on. I was almost embarrassed to see it. No, I'm just kidding. No,
they're actually coming back, as somebody told me the other day.
But I saw you following your kid last year, surprisingly enough, at the Rumble. And I was catching some of the matches, and I just kind of remember the spirit of the coaches kind of gathering the team, because it's a bigger tournament in a different environment, and you're starting to see kids at a different caliber, and you have to prepare kids at a different level for that type of competition, because they have to know how to wrestle a tough kid, even though they never seen him before. And I just watched. I want these people to sit off to the side and watch a lot of people and how they interact with their kids. And I was really impressed on how the team had this tight-knit thing going on last year that just seemed to kind of meld together correctly, because I don't know what it was, but I just saw the right things with the team last year.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The bad part about that tournament this year is our state started a moratorium in the summer, right before Fargo of all times, and then right over Christmas. So this year we would have to leave on the 26th to participate in that tournament. And this is the first tournament we're able to bring all the 8th graders, and we bring our whole JV team up, and they get an opportunity. My son, a couple of years ago, got in a 45-man bracket at the Rumble and placed 3rd and had a great tournament. This year he got put in the varsity bracket and as a freshman, and I think he went 1-2 or 2-2 somewhere there. And it was tough. And unfortunately this year we're not going to be able to go up there because we can't leave on that Thursday, which is
bad time.
It's tough. And in South Dakota, it's weird because gymnastics gets tons of waivers and tons of exceptions for club and this and that. So we're actually looking at a couple different options for tournaments in Bozeman, Montana. They've got a tournament where they run a full 8-man JV bracket and a 32 on the varsity side. And we've been in contact with that coach, and he's got interest in having us come out. Central, actually, Rapid City Central is going to be going to Sydney this year instead of Mandan. So Pierre got in, and they're going to get an opportunity to duel some of those teams, and the coach was kind of excited. And then we also talked to Mr. Andall, Coach Andall, about maybe going to McCook, but we're not really sure. That's an open weekend, but it would be 3 weeks off for us, which would be difficult. Correct.
Oh boy, I tell you what, excuse me, just trying to get your kids on the team good matches, good competition. It's a battle. We've had Mandan for many years, and I was coaching there. We had a couple of weekends where we were trying to find something that was good enough. So we would mix things up. We'd go to a dual tournament and we'd be okay with it, but we wanted to get matches for everybody. And that makes the difference. Our JV team needs to get matches too.
Right. And I think in the coming years, we've got the new Civic Center being built, and it sounds like the goal is eventually here within the next couple of years, to have that tournament more like the Rumble, where it's going to be a full JV tournament and a varsity tournament. And I know there's some rules in North Dakota about bringing some of your younger kids for overnights, early in the season. But we hope to, I think, grow that tournament a little bit. Last year we got Windsor in there, Colorado. Dominic Serrano came up. Riplinger had a great match with him.
Monty Truck, the head coach. Yep.
Monty. Yep. And we welcome those guys in, and our coach Travis King knows obviously Monty and that whole crew down there. And I think this year Brandon Valley is going to come out. Brandon's going to have a nice squad again this year. So they're going to come out to the Rapid City Invite. I think Windsor's coming back. There were some other teams that were interested. So it should be an exciting tournament. It's early in the year, so it's kind of tough. But then again, it's just the time it's always been. So that's what it is.
Yeah, see, it's not a North Dakota rule, but it is a Bismarck rule that they're underclassmen, 8th, 7th, and 8th graders who could make the varsity after Christmas. They have to wait, and if there's a freshman, sophomore, junior, if there's somebody available on the team, they get the spot first. You can't even wrestle off. It's goofy. And so 7th and 8th graders after Christmas, then because they actually have an official middle school season that goes, and then they have a middle school state, which is that about the 20th or so of December in there. And then after that is done, then they're free to be with the varsity. But those junior high kids have to sit out the first couple of weeks. They don't make the maximum amount of weeks you can have in a wrestling season. Oh, I had my computer go down here. I'm not me so much, but I had a bright light. So there it is.
No worries.
I have a computer in the back so I can watch what's happening in other places. And all of a sudden I'm in the dark.
Well, you mentioned your middle school tournament. We actually kind of copied that a few years ago, and we started it down here, and we ended up having it in February. So most of the West River kids in South Dakota wrestle their middle school season. It's a 9-week season from the end of October through about mid-December, just after the invite. And then they're able to normally come up and join the varsity teams as 8th graders and even 7th graders to compete, a JV. Most of the time at Stevens, they just bring up the 8th graders and let them compete unless there's a special athlete as a 7th grader, like a Chris Claprod or somebody like that, that Jensen, that's pretty salty as a young kid. Henrich did that. Cooper Voorhees did that. Some of those kids. But for the most part, so we started that tournament back in 2017 with, obviously Doug Wright was involved, myself, the Knichneys, Paul Turman was instrumental in it. We decided to host it in Pierre. So we had about 200 kids our first year in 2017. And selfishly, I had a middle school kid, so I was all for it to get involved in it. And we did our 3rd year last year. We had 354 wrestlers last year, only 200 to start. And that tournament's still growing. We get first-class referees, Stabner, and all those guys in Pierre. We get those guys to do that. And that tournament really has benefited our younger wrestlers, because for AAU, when you're a 6th or 7th grader in South Dakota, it's very difficult to get competitive matches without driving to Wyoming or Denver.
Right. Now, what's the big push with AAU still in the state and versus USA? And I know you're wearing the USA shirt.
Oh, I just had this black makes you look skinny, so I thought maybe it'd make me look skinny tonight. But no, I just put a wrestling shirt on. I've got plenty. It's not that I'm one way or the other. We actually had a meeting this summer with the Coaches Association, and we had Raleigh Fink and some of the USA guys come over, and talk about the benefits of both programs. Obviously, with the passing of Bob Johnson this last year, he was instrumental in, back in the days of Kimball and just being a wrestling, he was the director for the whole country in AAU.
Both AAU and USA for a while.
And we had some discussions about that this year, and they're going to talk about it at the state tournament this year about which way is the best way to go. Right now, we're still in AAU state. We still have a lot of kids wrestle both, obviously on the junior dual side and, the Fargo side. And then there are a few USA tournaments.
Is it the folk style that holds it back? That the state wants just folk style?
I don't know if it's necessarily, a lot of the clubs just do it. And we did, we added the freestyle here a couple years ago for the juniors and the cadets at our AAU state tournament, the South Dakota Coaches Association tournament. And, there was some confusion because you had to get 2 cards and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's just been AAU, and that's kind of been what's governed the state for years. But again, just kind of coming onto that board and learning some of that stuff, there's been a push to just look at the numbers. What is it going to bring in? How will it help us? Obviously, how can we support our athletes, going to different tournaments and duels? So I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I don't know what's holding it back. I think it's just been like that for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. And Bob was able to kind of, run it the way it was being run. And, that's kind of the way it was. So it was kind of before my time.
Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit. Tell me a little bit on the progress of your Black Hills Wrestling Academy and kind of how you got it started and what was the whole main idea of getting this going?
It would kind of happen by accident. And Brent Voorhees, who's one of our coaches at Stevens, but he's also he was a two-timer from Sturgis wrestler. His brothers were good. He wrestled at Wyoming, was an All-American there. And, Brent, there was a friend of ours that's got about a seventh grader that wrestles that built a new CrossFit gym. And upstairs there was going to be a jiu-jitsu gym. And the jiu-jitsu gym ended up pulling out of the building. And so they were looking for another tenant. And Brent's son, Cooper, his eldest, was a state champ last year and has recently committed to Wyoming to wrestle, to follow in his dad's footsteps. And he was kind of looking for something because of, the moratoriums and just the challenge it can be in the summer to get prepared for some of these tournaments. And then to also just, go in and get a workout in, and not have to necessarily always go to the school if there was something going on or an event or, or something like that, and to really offer it for the kids in the area as a supplemental piece and not to compete with the clubs. We kind of started this. We got a good crew of coaches that are, doing 12 and under groups, and some of the high school groups and the middle school groups.
So what was the main focus? What was the age area? Or is it trying to be at any level?
It was really any level. I think, initially we didn't really know what we'd get. We weren't sure if we'd draw in the high school kids. The tendency, outside of the high school kids, it was probably 50-50. We did an Olympic style for, to prepare some of the kids that went down and tried to get on the world teams. There was some Custer kids, that were interested in that. Logan Graff had went down and wrestled in that. There were some kids that were going to compete in Fargo. We ended up having a training camp for kind of the West River kids, and the Chamberlain kids actually came out, some of the Winter kids, Gregory kids, to train for junior duels and then to also train for Fargo. And they also had a camp over on the east side of the state, over in the Sioux Falls area. And, I think Brent's main focus was just to create an opportunity that was supplemental, because the club season in South Dakota is almost December, but more like January. If you start too early in December, some of those young kids don't make it to the postseason. And obviously you want to give them an opportunity to do that, but it isn't as important to those parents, and the kids don't know. Mm-hmm. So, versus burning them out by mid-February, a lot of the clubs start in January. The tournaments are basically January and a little bit in February, and then the postseason's in March, and then it kind of ends. We started to see some more progression with kids participating in the postseason a little bit. But again, Rapid City's a baseball town. So a lot of the older kids like to play baseball, and they'd rather win a Legion title than a football title. So it's hard to get them for football too.
Yeah, I went down there and I played them many times. Actually, we played with the Governors in Bismarck. So our coach wasn't very happy if we lost down there. I'll tell you that. But they were good. They were good. Definitely. Post 22. Yeah. No, a couple more questions. Who are some of the main coaches that you got right now down with the Black Hills Academy first?
The Black Hills Wrestling Academy. Currently, we've got a Bismarck guy in Drew Spalding. He wrestled a little bit at Minot. Was also, I think, a 3 or 4 timer I think he was in the finals 5 times.
Here's what's interesting. Yeah, he had to actually forfeit his final match. Think of that. He actually put his shoes out because he got hurt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he was a stud. Unbelievable wrestler for Bismarck High. In fact, he twisted up a couple of my wrestlers pretty well. Also, there at Mandan, he was tough, and he's a good guy. He's a super nice guy.
He's a super nice guy. He actually works where I work. We got Chris Claprod, who wrestled at the University of Iowa, and obviously wrestled at Stevens. He runs some practices. We have Kyle Kamada, who's a Washington native. He wrestled at the University of Wyoming. We have Leland Pfeiffer, who's a Hewlett native. And he wrestled at the University of Wyoming. And then obviously Brent Voorhees, the Sturgis, and he wrestled at the University of Wyoming. And then we've had some other guys come up and help out and be involved in the room. And like right now, I think they're practicing Mondays and Wednesdays for a 12 and under group and some middle school kids. And then some of the high school kids, now that high school has started, they're in their own rooms. But this summer we had some high school kids in there getting better. And having an opportunity to wrestle with some high level practice partners.
How big is this place? Is it a mat, 2 mats? Is it how
so
big?
It's basically it's about 2 mats, and there's a bleacher in there, and there's room for some bathrooms that we haven't put in upstairs yet. There's bathrooms downstairs with showers. So yeah. So it's 2 mats, and it's concrete building. It's a big, nice new building. It's located just off the interstate. We've had a lot of kids from Spearfish and Bell and Sturgis. And
is it going to be non? I don't know. Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. Is it going to be nonprofit? How's it going to be funded along the way?
We're looking at nonprofit right now because really the goal isn't, for everybody that's involved in it, it's not their main job. They've got other jobs. They're doing this because they love the sport. They're helping kids. They're creating opportunities that they probably had. Our coach used to tell the stories of him hanging around Lincoln McElravy and at his house, and he'd be downstairs working out, and he'd be, eating a bowl of cereal upstairs, talking to his dad, and him taking kids to tournaments. And so really, the goal is just to provide an opportunity to make kids better out here. And it's very reasonable. The goal isn't to really go out and make a bunch of money. To be frank, it's just an opportunity for kids to get a chance to work out in the off season, not necessarily to specialize. If they want to, that's up to them. But for the most part, it's just supplemental to whatever they're doing. We try to avoid the club nights, when they're doing things, and so I think, from our perspective, so far so good. We're learning a lot. But for the most part, there's 25 young kids up there now, they're getting extra work in before the season starts, learning some technique and kind of a college drill type practices. And then also, having some fun. So
do you have any kids go down to Denver for the preseason nationals or any of those things?
We did. We took some kids down to preseason nationals. We, down in Des Moines. Then we took some kids down to Monster Match. We had some kids play, some kids win. Some kids wrestle real well, get matches. That's just an opportunity kind of in the preseason to really get out and kind of see where you're at and get back into things before the season really starts. So yeah, we went down there.
Well, with my other host guy, he just texted me. Northern ended up winning 24-15 over Concordia, and his boy won 13-5.
13-5. You got a reversal right at the end, I saw. Yeah, it was tight.
And so he just texted me.
Yeah.
No. So tell me about the health of Rapid City's wrestling right now.
It seems to be strong. I was at a middle school tournament last night for my sixth grader. Spearfish came down with 40 kids for middle school. East and Southwest, and those both feed to Stevens. They had about in the mid-20s. I heard South Middle School where, one of the Morrison kids, that wrestles for Central, his dad coaches over there. They've got close to 40. I'm not sure about the North numbers. They're usually in the teens. So right now between, I looked at Central's roster today. They had 30 or 40 kids listed on it. I think we're going to be up over 40, close to 50 this year, at those two high schools. St. Thomas More, they always have 8, 10, 12 kids, around. So, and, you've always got Sturgis, Spearfish, they've got some good kids, state champ last year. Custer, Hill City, Hot Springs, I think the wrestling community out west is still holding their own. Obviously, East River, they've gotten better as well with some of the resources over there. So I think as a state, we're getting a lot more competitive. And then, of course, you go up north to Aberdeen and, Huron, and, you get in the central part of the state with Winter and Chamberlain and, Kimball. And, it's I posted some points from last year today. And, Canton obviously is loaded again. They've got a good program there with Swenson. And, but boy, and I talked to Brian Anglin today, his son's down in Vermilion, obviously one of our brothers coaches down at Yankton. It's a small world, but there's good kids everywhere, and I'll never forget it. There was a kid that was a 3-time state champion in Iowa. His name was John Henrich. He just went to wrestle at Nebraska. Mm-hmm. His dad, when he was about 12 or 13, was taking him over to a tournament, Wild West, over in Gillette. He asked me if I was taking my son over there, and I said, no, I don't think he's quite ready for that. He said, well, Tom, when he starts beating everybody around here, you're going to have to get in your car and drive. And I never believed him, but he was right. So, ultimately, good story. John was a 3-time state champ in Iowa, down there in Akron, and he just went on to wrestle at the University of Nebraska, and he was wrestling this weekend at the DAC. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. No, I looked at your points earlier, and I saw Brandon Valley pretty high there. So I was kind of impressed that you got the Rapid City schools, if I remember right, and then Brandon Valley. And it could be interesting because, Pierre's been so dominant for so many years. And, when you take a handful and they almost had 5, that's tough to do because you're running through a whole class of being freshmen and winning it all the way through. And just to keep that going, they're going to be a force. Who would you say would be your, I would say, East River and West River main picks besides yourself? The toughest teams.
I think Rapid City Central and Sturgis, are always good. From this side of the state in the A's, obviously, Watertown's always got some good kids. They had a couple kids commit to Northern. I think Brandon Valley is going to be good. Pierre will be good. I think, just looking at the numbers, and again, they don't mean anything necessarily today. And again, that was all just conjecture on points last year and stuff. But those are some of the teams out. The Roosevelt had a great year last year too. I mean, they got the Kadoom kid. They've got Riley Hongshead. I saw a Twitter feed the other day from Sioux Falls, Washington, and I think they had 30 kids in the room or 25. And Washington's obviously loaded in football, and if they could get some of those kids that play football to wrestle, look out. Lincoln's building their program over there. T's got some good young kids, and Eimers does a great job over there. They've got some good young kids and some middleweight kids. And all the Harrisburg's coming on. They might be one of the largest schools in our state in not a few years. And I think, and T's going to get bigger. There's schools. There's schools all over the place, East River, that are just getting bigger. And some of those kids in Sioux Falls are able to move around a little bit because they're close. And there's even kids, all over that do that. But, those are some of the teams that were some of the point getters that I kind of looked at today. Chamberlain, obviously, they lost a few, John's young, his son, and a few kids. But, Brookings has got some good kids. Mitchell has been young, and they've got a new coach over there, that Everson is coaching over there. They took a whole team to middle school duels or freshman, sophomore duels, all Mitchell kids for the most part. So, look out for Mitchell as well. And, I don't know. You don't know what you don't know yet. And so you have to wait and see. But those are some of the ones.
Well, I tell you what, over the years, I've looked at a couple different newspapers trying to get results. And, a few papers that have done good is, Mitchell does a good job promoting their sports. Yankton always has some stuff in there about wrestling. And then Rapid City's starting to get better. I tell you what, there were some years where it's pretty dry getting some stuff, but they at least cover the main tournaments and get things going. I've always kind of been one of those people that want to squeeze some necks and shake a little bit, say, hey, guess what? Promote your sport a little more, promote wrestling. You shouldn't have 3 pages of all the basketball things, and give us a half a page. We'll be happy.
Well, we had a wrestling guy out here. Jeff Budlong was the name of a guy that moved to Sioux City, and he now reports for the Sioux City Journal. So they've got fantastic wrestling coverage down there. He did a great job out here. They ended up moving away. So I've taken the liberty over the last few years, even before my kids started wrestling varsity, I started posting the brackets, if I could, after the tournaments in a PDF for most of these teams and kids, just to read them while they go home to see what happened during the day. So when we came back, we wrestled a lot in North Dakota in December. So when we drove back from those tournaments with my wife, bless her heart, but she would pull up every tournament from the day and go through all the brackets, and we talk about who did what, because it was usually such a long ride home that we had an opportunity to do that. So some of my bracket posting was a little bit late last year, just for the simple reason of that. But that also helps our friends that do the rankings, to get them to get an idea. And of course, for some people to fill out their big book, or their holy grail, as I call it, of all the matches that have taken place in South Dakota. That's always nice to get him those results, because he logs all those. So it's pretty awesome.
It is crazy, some of the people that can keep track of all that. I tell you, track wrestling is a blessing for me. I love to see results. In fact, I've got my wife hooked, and she'll get on and she'll go, oh, check out this weight class. This is where my son's name's Jax. This is who wrestled in Jax's weight class over there, or whatever. I'm going, relax, don't worry about it. He's pretty tough. It's probably the wife thing. I don't know, but it's pretty cool having the family involved. And my wife knows the wrestlers as good as anybody, around certain weight classes and all the way through. And in fact, she was going through who's coming back, or all the seniors on the team, who all the juniors are. They've got no sophomores. In fact, imagine that, having a whole class and having no sophomores out for wrestling at Century.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy. Yep, whole class of them.
And we actually picked up a duel this year. Nash Hutmaker was out here this summer with some of his winter buddies, and they were out at the lake with our head coach and some other guys. So we're actually going to duel Chamberlain the night before the Rapid City Invite at Stevens. And, you know, Sturgis always and Central always duel Aberdeen and Huron the night before. And, of course, now with the new maybe a combination weigh-in where you've got a tournament that weekend, it just counts as one. So some of those teams could pick up an extra duel. And with the state duels coming out this year, you know, that dueling is going to be important this year for a lot of teams if they want to, you know, contend for a state duel championship.
Ryan Miller says Kevin Valak said that the wrestling Bible doesn't exist.
Well, some people don't believe it, but I've seen it myself. So
yeah, I tell you what, I've sat down and talked to Kevin many times, and he is a bank of knowledge about wrestling and different wrestlers. In fact, many times he said, okay, Crow Creek has got the, what do I know about Crow Creek? I couldn't find nothing. This is going back into the early 2000s, previous to the internet. And he goes, oh, I saw the junior high tournament in, they were down in Yankton, and they've got these 5 wrestlers, and he'd give them their names because I wanted to get somebody in there. And sure. He'd have the most obscure things. Iroquois has got a wrestler, or I'm going, and he would say, you know, Chamberlain's got these people, and he goes, of course, Bonholm and all the other places, but he's fabulous for knowing all that stuff. But I know the Bible exists too.
Oh yeah. No, he'd never admit to it, but it does. It's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was you know what, like I said, the state duels this year, that'll be interesting. I did check the schedule for that. You had mentioned that the other night, and they are actually going to wrestle the individual first round on Thursday, and then they're going to wrestle the quarterfinals of the individual, and then the team duels late Thursday. And then the consolation rounds for individual are going to be Friday, and the semifinals individual, instead of being Saturday morning, they're now going to be Friday afternoon.
Ooh, Friday afternoon, not Friday. What time? You talking 4 o'clock?
After 12:30, and then at 5 o'clock they're going to start the semifinals for the team, and then do the third place duel and the championship duel at 8 o'clock on Friday night, and then the wrestlebacks for consolations will be Saturday morning, and then placing matches in the afternoon.
Oh, wow. That's going to be interesting. That'll make a crazy Friday, going early on Friday. People are going to have to skip out of work for sure.
Yeah, you're going to want to be out of there by lunch. And this year it's in Sioux Falls, so we don't get the first rodeo with holding the duels. But, you know, I'm sure they'll do a great job.
They're probably going to be happy about that.
Yeah. Who knows? So that'll be interesting to see how it works this year. I know at East-West Duels, you know, Brian Mosier, the old Stevens coach, is the AD over there, and Sean obviously is a coach over there, but they're trying to build that up a little bit too. They're going to have a few more teams, maybe even a few duels on Friday night. And I think we get 4 on Saturday. So I think they're going to add some teams. I don't know who all is going to come and how that's going to work, but, you know, usually it's just 3 duels. And Watertown, I think, got out of that this year. But, you know, it sounds like, you know, that's always Brandon, Pierre, I don't know, Stevens, Central, Sturgis. And I'm here in Harrisburg, maybe Roosevelt, and maybe some other teams, because we've got to get, I think you've got to get 8 duels in to qualify. In the ESD, that won't be hard, but some of the other schools, especially out here for us, you know, we've got to go hunt those down.
Right. Because that makes it really interesting, because I know, like, the Little B and all these things they used to call it down in Parkston, they had a big tournament, and then now they got to figure out some dual competitions, and the B is going to be more, I think the A is going to work itself out much easier than the Class B, because the Class B, they have to agree to participate. Not all teams are going to be involved, even though that's been a big part of their schedule, having you know, basically duels against many teams in a place. But to fill a full team, we'll have to really look into that, see how the B works out. Because I think the A could handle this, not a problem. A great state tournament. B, it's going to be the big question.
Yeah, and I think we have to declare too as a school, I think by the end of December. And I think even looking, the fill-up tournament this year might even be a dual tournament for that reason, to probably get some of those in. And then there's some rules, you know, with regards to placing, that you've got to have so many weight classes filled to be able to place. And I think it was 8 and 10 or something like that. 8 for B and 10 for A or something like that, to be able to compete in that. And I'm not obviously the authority on all that. I've just read that. So that's all new.
Okay. Do you know the exact criteria for the Class B and Class A exactly to get in, or how?
To get in, you just have to declare, and I believe.
Well, that's to get into, to try to get into it, but to get to state.
Well, I think what they're going to do is they're going to do a PowerPoint system like football, so that those teams, you basically report your duel results, and we could duel a B team.
Who's determining this?
This was just posted on the activities website, so this would come from the advisory committee, I assume.
Is it the advisory committee going to sit down and have a big meeting at the end of the year, or is it?
They already have. I think they've got this stuff is out there on the website of the Activities Association. So I believe they're going to seed it up to 8 teams.
Okay.
And that's how they're going to run the duel in both A and B, and then they're going to wrestle it out to 3rd and 4th place.
Okay, because Andal is part of that committee, isn't he? Also,
I believe he is. Yeah. So the top 8 teams, based on the seeding format, will qualify for the dual championships. And then the teams will be placed into a traditional 8-team bracket. You get power points like football, 50 for a win and 39 for a loss, depending on the record of the other dual team. So it could go down to as low as 30. And then if you win and they haven't had as successful a season, you could get as low as 41. So it's kind of based on the football power points. So if you beat a team that's 0-8, you're going to get 41 points. If you beat a team that's 6-1, you're probably going to get 50 points. And then those points will generate probably the seeds and who gets in.
Right. Interesting. Because it's going to be tough. It's going to be kind of interesting because you want to face good competition, but do you really want to with the duel in a certain sense? Do you want always to face? It's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to see how this works out. I'm going to have to pay close attention.
So the 2 rules in order to qualify for medal and place at the state duel championships, a team must be able to fill 10 of 14 weight classes in Class A and 8 of 14 weight classes in Class B.
Okay.
So that's the criteria that's listed. And again, I'm not the expert. I just printed it off, kind of read through it. But I know a lot of coaches, and even ours, are making sure that we get 8 duels in, So if we get 4 at East-West, we're halfway home. We get Central, that's 5. We get Sturgis, that's 6. We get Chamberlain, that's 7. And normally we wrestle Lee Deadwood, our JV has in the past.
Right.
Unfortunately, this year, that might matter to win, from a dual perspective. And then we may have another one with maybe a Douglas or a Spearfish, so that'll probably get us to that number.
Okay. Very interesting, because I tell you what, it's going to be exciting. It's a different aspect. I don't know. It's a team opportunity, where you can bring some guys along who get to experience state who might not qualify also. And then you might have to depend on somebody, bringing extra wrestlers where you bump people, and it's a different perspective looking at the duels.
Well, that's the question we've been asking a little bit, is how many can you bring? And the word on the street is they didn't cap it. So I don't know if they're going to cap it, but if not, we could bring 50.
Well, imagine if you just huddled up 40 guys and just one guy ran out on the mat when it came time,
That'd be kind of cool.
They're looking at their list as a coach going, which of the 5 are coming out?
Right. Well, that'll be interesting. That might create some drama,
know. You guys probably are the only team that have a room that big to have that many. No.
Well, I mean, we're probably one of the few. There's a few, but yeah.
You guys have a big room right now. I tell you what, when I looked at the numbers, it's pretty nice to see that.
Well, we're blessed. We've got a room with 4 mats in it, and it's a pretty big room, and we've got ropes in there and a lot of things, and it's we're just very lucky to have the room we have, and that was a great fundraising effort from the club and also from the city to do that.
Yep. So Sean Lewis asks on here, he actually put a question on. So how much will the East-West duels affect state duels with PowerPoints, he thinks?
Oh, I think they'll affect them a lot, because if there's a team like, say, a Sturgis or a Central wrestles somebody there that, they don't get to see in the regular season, their duel, say like, let's say Aberdeen, but they'll get to duel them. But, they're going to probably have to look at how maybe whoever they dueled the other team. I mean, it may get crazy if there's a lot of mediocrity in the duels per se. If there's a lot of 4-4 or 5-4 or 5-3 teams, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that shakes out. I don't know. I think the East-West duels is a great opportunity to get a chance to wrestle as a dual team. And not only that, those duels have always provided a chance for the JV wrestlers to wrestle as well, right alongside them.
Mhm.
So you can take both teams, which is fantastic, to grow your wrestlers.
So what is the rule in South Dakota now for the number of weigh-ins that you have? And we were kind of discussing that a little bit. Did you clear that up at all, if you could do over the weekend thing?
Well, I think it's 15 is what each team gets. And with that combination weigh-in this year, that'll help. But, some of these teams, aren't allowed to travel as frequently as basketball teams. We're fortunate in the sense that, we have to travel quite a bit. Our kids are used to staying in hotels. And as a matter of fact, at state last year, we put our kids up in a hotel. So it was like going to the Rumble or Mandan. So that it wasn't anything different for them, and they didn't have the distraction.
The team together. I agree with that philosophy.
Yeah. So, I think it's 15. I don't know that that's changed. It's 14 or 15 in that range. With the combination weigh-ins, that'll cut it down. We've always been a couple short. We had started dueling Custer a couple years ago. We dueled Custer down in Edgemont, which was great. And Jared Webster, the old coach down there from Custer, his dad actually did play-by-play of the duels, which was interesting because you don't usually get that. And yelling for two, and Doyle Everson hasn't quite awarded yet, and Doyle's looking over to him like, "Hey, I get to make that call." But
over the microphone, you're probably
yeah, exactly, the microphone over the loudspeaker.
Oh,
and over the loudspeaker. They had 400 people there. They had cooked a bunch of home cooked meals. Kids got to eat after the JV matches, and of course they were loaded with young kids. So our JV kids got multiple matches, and so we started doing them a couple years ago. I think they've got a big duel this year before the Augustana duel against Canton over there. So it'll be interesting to see, whether or not how the state enjoys, awarding 2 state championships and individual and all that, because Minnesota is obviously different. And, I don't know if some of the other sports will say, geez, could we do something similar? Or, I don't know.
I've always said we're our own sport, we're our own state. Don't copy anybody else. We want to have our own thing. And if we want to compare ourselves to Minnesota, it's not right, because we're not Minnesota. We're not South Dakota. We can maybe bring stuff to us, but no, the rest is not how it is.
So going back to your question with East-West duels, I think they're great, and I think they'll be important this year. I mean, they're obviously going to be important to teams like, for sure the West River teams, because we're seeing those East River teams. We may not get a chance. We're not going to travel to Sioux Falls for a duel.
Yeah. Though the reason I ask a little bit on that too, myself, I think, what if a team has 15 duels and another team only has 9? How can't the team with 15 duels have more points?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know how they're going to classify that. And the other rub would be, frankly, if you're dueling teams that are Class B and they've got some open weights,
right.
Does that help you? I mean, frankly, it might. Yeah.
Right.
So I think there's some kinks to work out. There's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of guys for the duels that, and I don't know, some of the guys I've talked to, and this is my own opinion, there's a lot of guys that aren't coaches that are for the duels. And there's some coaches that are kind of for them, but they're like, I'm for them, but it kind of depends how this shakes out.
Right. Right. And this is still trial again. Remember last time they had them for 2 years?
They had them from 2001 to 2004. I've actually got that. Sturgis won 3, Winter won 1 as an A school. Okay. Parkland won 2, Howard won 1, and Bonhomme won the other one. So they did it for 4 years.
Man, that time flies between there, because I'm all mixed up on that, because what I was thinking was that, just running it all on Thursday like they didn't have the crowd. They weren't paying the bills, basically, is what they're worried about more than anything. And I thought they would change the schedule up before they got rid of them. But no, they just canceled forever, and it took forever to get them back.
It did, and I'm not opposed to them. I'm not necessarily for them. I don't know. I'm new to that. I mean, I think it will be exciting. It'll be interesting. Obviously there's some teams. Even like a Dickinson last year. They were pretty deep, and they had some good kids. They come down to, the invite, and I think we see them in Bell as well. They had a good squad. And it just kind of takes that momentum. But I guess we'll see when when you have kids that might be in the semis against a kid that's going to be in the semis later, how that shakes out. You've been through it.
Oh yeah. I've seen some teams who come out in the duel that they couldn't probably win an individual, but they could do it as a team. Right. You have enough studs that are in that 3rd, 4th, 5th place range all the way across your lineup instead of the champions. And it's been phenomenal. North Dakota loves it. And I wouldn't ever give it up, Because I tell you what, our Friday in North Dakota is probably one of the best things in my life I've ever experienced, because you bring the lights down twice that night, one for the semifinals, and then right after that comes the dual finals. And
well, that's what's going to happen in South Dakota this year. That Friday is going to be fantastic.
I agree. I guess I'm going to have to be there all day long.
Well, they'll probably stream it too. You could probably stream it. And,
yeah. See what's interesting about media-wise in North Dakota and South Dakota. North Dakota, I'm pretty much allowed during the regular season to do anything. I could go to a match myself, and it could be anywhere. I just have to get permission from that school, and I could actually go live and live tape it, and then or whatever, and broadcast it. In South Dakota, it's not quite the same. You have to get permission from the South Dakota Activities Association for every time you do it, and then they want to get paid for it. You have to actually pay them something, unless it's your own home duel, and then you got to kind of work out your system with it.
Well, that's the interesting part. We started streaming our duels a couple of years ago, and I know I've had other towns chime in and people that I know, and my parents were actually able to watch my son in Phoenix. But and there's an old coach that you might know, John Aldridge, that was around Rapid City. He and I kind of commentate the duels at Stevens when we've done it over the last couple of years, and it's been fantastic. And I know, a good friend of mine, Jody Brozick, runs a live ticket, and he does a lot of football and a lot of wrestling. And he's come out for the Invite a few years, and he's able to broadcast those. He does the McCook tournament in Aberdeen, and he sets up a lot of cameras, does a fantastic job. But yeah, and then for the state tournament, the public television has a contract for that, so they run that through Track Wrestling, I think, and they're able to do that through that. But a lot of the other tournaments, it's fun to be able to sit around and watch that. But now that my kid's wrestling, I don't get that opportunity anymore. But yeah, I can tell you that I watched like the Mandan Bismarck duel last year. Yep. I was trying to see who was wrestling at different weights and get a chance to see who's where. But that's kind of exciting, and that promotes the sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I would do it anytime for anybody. It's just how I am. I love doing it. It's just the sport that you get to see it. You get to feel the crowd. It's just an atmosphere that I could never replace, I guess.
Right.
I always consider myself a lifer. Would you consider yourself a lifer for wrestling?
I probably am. I don't. I've got a sixth grader that's still wrestling. I've got a
sophomore. Give it up when they're done, would you?
I don't know. I've got into baseball umpiring. I kind of enjoy that. I've always said that would be my fishing for the summer. That's a thankless job, but I kind of enjoy it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still involved with the club, and my kids are almost aged out. I still, it's fun I'm in charge of getting the tappers together for the state tournaments and for the Rapid City Invite. And those kids, I look back at some of the kids that are wrestling in high school now, and I got them to tap when they were 5th and 6th graders, and to have them have an opportunity to go out on the mat. It's unbelievable. It's almost everything comes full circle. And as I mentioned with, a lot of the referees.
It's got to be every level. It's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. And I actually, when we started our state middle school tournament, I wanted to start it right after the Invite with the high school teams. And I've even wanted to get college teams to come down and duel at an intermission or after the championship. I tried to talk Rocky and those guys into coming out, and they did that thing in Sioux Falls, which kind of bummed me out. But, I was hoping to make that a little bit bigger. But the East River schools tend to do middle school in the second part of the year or after January. So it didn't work for them. And some of the Sioux Falls schools, I don't know if they all have middle school wrestling, but, some of them are challenged with that too. So we ended up moving our state middle school tournament to the weekend right before regions in South Dakota. And this year it's scheduled, I think, in Pierre again. And they do a fantastic job. They got tons of horsepower over there. And it's centrally located. And Aberdeen, for example, they'll take a bus of kids over there to wrestle, and they make a full day of it. And I tell you, in terms of the wrestling community, it's one of the proudest things I've been a part of. It's fantastic to have parents come up to you and say, geez, we couldn't get an AAU match all year, and my kid just got 5 and got 7th, and he's excited about high school next year. What else do you want to do?
So true. Here's what's interesting. So I'll give you a little secret here. I was doing some research on you before I contacted you, and I looked at I kind of how could you call this? I spied on your Facebook page, everything else a little bit, but talking to a couple of the coaches, they were so surprised on how close you got to your kids. Like you have this connection with little kids, like in the aspect like the mat tappers, like you're saying. There's something that you have a connection with kids, and that's a good thing. having all levels. I mean, I've been around coaches where they just have this attraction to bring kids into a sport, and those are the people you want with your programs. Jeff Schumacher with Bismarck High, I see little kids follow him around like he's the Pied Piper playing. Like it's crazy because they just fall in love with the sport because of the people around it. And I think you're one of those people.
I hope I am. I don't. I'm kind of the coach when nobody else is available. I can yell, "Get off your back," or put that half in, put the snake in.
Yeah.
But I'm probably more of the organizer, and make sure, things get done, and they're in the right spot, and kind of type A that way. But I can coach, but I'm dangerous to about 12U, and then I'm out. I'll let the good guys coach, because when legs get starting thrown in and power halves and all that, I'm probably useless. But for young kids, to show up and be excited and get a T-shirt and clean up some blood and talk about. I remember a few years ago there was a Canton kid that almost ran out of blood time at the state tournament, and the kids, that's all they talked about. And in between the state tournament, they shut the lights off and kick everybody out for the state tournament to punch their card in for the next session. And all of our mat tappers were playing hide and go seek in the Civic Center, and then football. And they almost broke 2 computers and a clock, and they were all sweaty when we started the next session. But every one of them was just happy to be there to get out of school and get a snack. And you know what? It's good stuff.
See, that is awesome. That's the same reason why I've always said to coaches about having cheerleaders at the sport. Now, we've kind of gotten rid of them all in most places, but guess what? Those cheerleaders make young little wrestlers too, and because they enjoy their aspect. And so you got to include it all. That's part of the, having girls wrestle. I don't know. Tell me this question real quick. And I know we're almost running out of time. We've almost got an hour already talking wrestling. But what does it look like for girls wrestling in the Rapid City area right now?
I think we've got 5 girls out. I saw 3 Spearfish girls wrestling last night. We had a girl move in from Alaska that wrestled in one of our middle school teams. I think it's growing. I think there's an opportunity there. And we tried to do something at the academy for girls only and didn't have as good a response as we wanted. And I think the big thing today for girls wrestling is, we've got to help. We've got to encourage the girls that want to wrestle to get other girls to wrestle, because it's harder for coaches and parents of non-wrestlers or non-girl wrestlers to encourage other girls to wrestle, because it's not necessarily an icebreaker to start talking about that, in theory. And I know, I think Sean has a girl that wrestles, but we've got, and we actually took some girls to a separate tournament in Nebraska last year for them to wrestle in. And I've heard rumors that they may, in the future, I don't know about this year, but maybe next year, they may even have an all-girls state tournament before the state tournament of the boys to be able to wrestle. And obviously, even looking back, Rona Heaton, when she wrestled, she was good enough to hang with a lot of kids, that were out there. She was pretty good. But it can be difficult. And if they don't have some success, it's hard to stay out. So, I think there's certainly support out here, especially, in the Spearfish community. There's a girl up there that wrestles, a Fearbach girl. She's pretty good. We've got a girl that wrestles for us, Alicia, and we've got 4 or 5 other girls that have come out. And I think a lot of them come out because they're friends with the girls that wrestle, but it's not that the boys are attracting them either. And it creates a few challenges from a high school coaching perspective and a school perspective. But for the most part,
I think just to get a coach just for the girls. That's
well, not only that, but on the bus and making sure, everything's copacetic. I mean, there's a few things there, but for the most part, I think, they've been welcomed into our room. I think, I think Central might have one this year. Spearfish obviously has had some. I think there's probably more out there that want to do it, but they might be waiting at a school for somebody else to start,
Sure.
to get them in. But I think if some girls would recruit other girls, which I think is what it might take. And our coach, Travis King, is fully supportive of it. And even some of the tournaments that are out there today, you may get a match, you may not. It's kind of all over the board. We're not where some of the other states are, but there's certainly scholarship opportunities for those girls. My girl was blessed to be good at soccer, and she's, Northern's helping me out with that, and I can't complain about that a bit. So,
well, I tell you what, I did a little research on girls wrestling and stuff, but 18 states now have it sanctioned. Excuse me. And there's also over 22,000 girls in the United States that participated last year. And it was the second largest growing sport in all of high school sports. The only one that was bigger than it was surprisingly was lacrosse. But it must be pretty big some places. But other than that, I tell you what, as long as we're promoting the sport of wrestling. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here really quick here. I want to ask you, the last thing, if you had to basically go from day one wrestling practice, what would you say would be the big driving factor to keep a kid interested and when he's not having success? Let's say your own kid or anything that way. It's a really tough question, but what would you do as a parent?
Well, I tell you, it's the hardest sport in the world, and it's not easy to watch as parents when you're growing up, even with young kids. It's hard to even sit in the stands when your kid's getting manhandled by another kid. I think you've got to make it fun, early on for those kids. And once they get into high school, I think if you set the groundwork that it's going to be tough, and your goal this year might be to win one match or 4 matches, or it might be to get some escapes or takedowns. I think you have to pull the wrestlers aside and maybe get to know them individually and understand, what their strengths are. And that might take a couple weeks into a couple JV tournaments or something. But, I think the only way to do it is give those kids opportunities. We're blessed out here in Rapid City that our JV kids wrestle a varsity B schedule. And that doesn't happen on the east side of the state. And I think it makes our kids better. And one of the things I had on my agenda here to talk about tonight briefly was you guys added a JV state tournament. Why don't we have one? I mean, I think there should be JV tournaments in Chamberlain every other weekend for some of those kids to get mat time. And that's part of the reason we started the middle school tournament was to give some of those kids that are in no man's land an opportunity, even if they've been wrestling sophomores or freshmen all year, to go compete against the kids that they're going to compete against long term. So I think, you got to put them in the right situation. And if they don't get an opportunity to, kind of like football, to play a game or to go out on the mat and get an actual match, they're not going to last.
Right. Very good. I agree completely with what you said. I believe finding little successes along the way, having them, have goals, somewhere where, you only have to get this done. This is the toughest guy in the state. If you can get a takedown, if you can do this, if you can just find little successes and keep building on that little success, I think that's a big part of it. That's awesome. Well, I do appreciate it, Tom. We're going to have to visit again. I tell you what, we just roll. So many things we could talk about. I have big interest in what's happening down around the Rapid City area. It's just such a beautiful country. And, I've got friends and relatives down there. I make it down the summer. I'll have to take you out for a burger or adult beverage or something. You never know. But enjoy. Guess what? I love the sport of wrestling. I know you do. And I'll just give you the last words, and then I'll say peace out.
Okay. Thanks for having me on today. I hopefully we had a few people get a chance to watch and like it and subscribe and, hopefully be a part of it and contribute and, stay positive out there. I know on your message board that's very active in the South Dakota community, and you talk about that. And I have learned my lesson from years ago to be positive and post good things and really just post good information. I remember when Thompson wrestled Teskey, down in Council Bluffs, some of that stuff, if, like you said, if the papers aren't putting it in the paper or it's online, Flow Wrestling's been great, to have an opportunity to watch stuff. But there's a lot out there. I heard Bono do an interview in Track Wrestling here tonight, and he basically said, I give our sports information people the green light to put everything out there because kids today and parents today don't necessarily want to go search for things. They want you to give it to them. And if you can put it out there and let them click on it, they're going to read it. They're going to look at it. They're going to watch it. They're going to think it's cool. I think we've just almost got to take it a step further and almost push it out there a little bit further for people to really grasp the sport and to get excited about it and promote it and not just assume people are coming to find it.
Right. That's great. I love it because that's what I'm trying to do here. Exactly. I'm trying to do that. Just promote the sport. That's awesome. Any way possible. Well, Tom, again, we're going to talk again. Everybody out there in wrestling land, thanks a lot for coming and watching tonight. Come watch the videos. click subscribe. I want to get a ton more people out here. We've had several people watching tonight. We're going to get a lot more. Thanks for the thumbs up, everybody. And everybody have a good night. God bless wrestling.